Hi, Devrath. Thanks for joining us at Unbox Health.
Hi, hey Arjun, nice to meet you.
Likewise, how's it going?
Not bad, not bad. I'm currently based in Oroville, so just in here in Bangalore, just for like a couple of days. So I try and come down here every alternate weekend just to kind of take care of work. But otherwise, yes, it's been good. It's been pretty busy, but in a good way.
Um, Great. Yeah, for people, I'm sure a lot of the people watching this probably have already or may already be familiar with you. But for those that don't, it would be great to get a brief introduction about yourself, right? A little bit about your background, how you got into the fitness industry.
Right, sure. Well, I think I professionally started working in the industry in 2012, so it's been I guess a little over a decade. I started with, just like every other Bangalorean, did my computer science engineering. Also did a little bit of a corporate stint for just over a year with IBM and figured very early that was not really my scene. And then all I was doing in front of the computer in IBM was like researching fitness articles, seeing what certifications I could do and how I can transition into fitness. Of course, the options back then in the fitness industry was very less as compared to what it is now. So fortunately, I was able to talk to the right people, most of them living outside of India. So I've got to kind of, speak to them, understand what I need to do to kind of make that transition. So worked in a few gyms, but essentially now I'm a strength and conditioning specialist, but also I do a lot of other things, which is like animal flow. So I'm an animal flow master instructor. I currently am practicing Kalari Paita. It's a martial art. So I say, yeah, in a way, I guess I'm somebody who runs gyms. I have a couple of gyms, but I'm also very actively involved in my own personal kind of training, and I kind of enjoy that. Yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Very interesting. And yeah, pretty unique story. I think the transition from a computer science engineer to a fitness professional and now an entrepreneur. But even while you were an engineer, did you always have this interest in fitness and were you always an active person growing up?
Yeah, definitely. I was always into sports in school, and then I was doing part-time kickboxing and dancing semi-professionally back in college. So you could say, in a way, I was always into some form of movement. And started kind of lifting weights, started enjoying it. So went through that whole journey of, wanting to get big and jacked, and and then slowly came back to again getting interested in movement again. So there was this little um, nice kind of up and down with respect to how my training went. But yes, to answer your question, I was always kind of into fitness. It just became more of a profession later on. Yeah.
Interesting. So what does a typical day in the life of Devrath look like in terms of like your wake up time, your typical workout routine? I'm sure it varies day by day, but
Yeah.
on average, yeah, I would love to know more about your nutrition, sleep. How do you think about all of these things?
So currently, like I was saying, I'm doing this course. So Kalari Pite is a martial art from Kerala, and the school that I'm training in is in Oroville. So they have a sister school in Calicut, but also one in Oroville is called Kalari Gram. So I'm doing like a 2-year diploma course in this martial art. And I've kind of dabbled in different martial arts over the years, and I've slowly kind of transitioned into now Kalari Fighter, because it's not just physical, it's not just about the fighting art, but it's a very spiritual practice as well, and that's something that is part of my life right now. And right now, if you ask me, my routine is wake up around 5 a.m. We have training from about 6 to 9, so that's almost 3 hours of training, and then I get a little bit of a break, and then post which I have all of my. I also run an online training company called Sweaty Ninjas, so I have a bunch of online training work to do, take care of stuff with the. I have a partner who runs operations here in the gym, so but my work is more online, more social media and business strategy kind of related work. So I kind of do that, and then we have another 2 hours of training somewhere around 4 to 6 in the evening. And somewhere in between these two phases of martial arts training, I try and get a little bit of strength work, because I can't completely ignore that. So I would say in a day I'm training for almost 6 7 hours a day right now currently, because of this particular course that I'm doing. But otherwise, yeah, like I said, another 3, 4 hours goes into actual physical work hours, online work, and nutrition as much as possible. I try and keep it. I'm not super strict in terms of, being, I don't really count my calories as such, but I try and make sure that I get my macros right as much as I can. And I have somebody who cooks for me so that way I have, home food available. So it's not an issue. And yeah, as much as possible, I try and get at least a minimum of 7 hours of sleep, because I'm obviously putting my body through a lot. So I try and hit the bed early and wake up early. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like you're training more hours than you're sleeping. uh,
Yeah, actually, yeah, if you look at it that way.
that's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. I'm sure we must be ending up eating a lot too, right? Do you think, in terms of your caloric needs, how much do you think you consume in an average day?
I would say yes and no. If you look at it purely from the physical part of it, it is because you are kind of exhausting your body in a way. Yes, your appetite should increase. But like I said, because it's also a little bit of a spiritual practice, it kind of, I would say, balances out, because anybody who's into kind of spiritual practice, whether it's yoga or meditation or any of that, you will see that the appetite actually comes down and you don't tend to overeat. So I would say somewhere it kind of balances out. There is the physical aspect of it, where I make sure I get enough protein and the rest of the stuff that I need. But at the same time, because of the spiritual practice, there's also a need for you to not constantly be full, to be able to really, be in the right frame of mind, both mentally and spiritually. So that way, I don't see myself overeating. Whereas if I compare myself to when I was probably training less hours, but I was doing more weight training, I was a lot more hungrier, and my calorie intake definitely was higher back then.
Interesting. You talked about the journey that you've had from a um, traditional gym practice where you were trying to get bigger to now more functional training and this new
Yeah.
style of movement called animal flow. How did you get into this space and what was that process like?
Sure. So, just like every other guy wants to get big and jacked, I had a similar journey. So I was lifting a lot of weights. I was doing bodybuilding style workouts. When I was going to IBMs, I was this odd guy out in the office who would bring in like 20 egg whites in a box and sit there in front of the computer, and everyone's looking at me like, what's wrong with this guy? Um, so I went through that whole phase, and I put on almost 14 kgs on purpose. And so I got like really big and muscular. And then, like I was telling you, because I had movement kind of, experience before I started lifting weights, I saw that as I started getting big and muscular, I was only kind of taking care of maybe one or two aspects of fitness, which is, absolute strength and maybe hypertrophy. But everything else, from my mobility standpoint to how I was feeling within my body to how my joints were feeling, my fluidity, all of that was kind of getting compromised. So I was just at that point kind of doing my research to see what I can do other than just stretching and yoga. And that's when I came across, people like Ido and Mike Fitch and all of these guys who were kind of doing a lot of things in the movement, space. So yeah, so that's when I kind of did my research and figured that at that point, level one, level two certifications of animal flow were happening in different cities in India. And that's when I did it under Richard. So he was the master instructor who was coming down from the UK. So that's kind of how the journey started. Got to go to Italy and do a mentorship with Mike Fitch, who's the creator of Animal Flow. And then the kind of journey went from there. And then, I got to train under him personally. And then I got to become a master instructor. So I would say now I've kind of found a balance between weight training and movement. So that way, I'm not overdoing any of these two. So I still love my weight training and my strength training. It's not that I want to stop that, because that's still a strong foundation, which is, really helpful. But at the same time, not making sure that, making sure that I get my mobility is just making sure that the rest of my body, right, from your joints to your connective tissues, all of these are staying nice and healthy. And this is what I teach as well when I teach my clients, to kind of have a balance between the two.
Very interesting. So, for those of us that may not be familiar with animal flow or some of the details about it, could you briefly explain what animal flow is and what makes it unique compared to other forms of movement?
Sure. So, simple way to put it, it's a body weight based movement training discipline where you don't really need any equipment. It's just your body and how you move on the floor. The reason why it's super beneficial is that it gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of put your body in positions which you otherwise would not be able to in traditional training. So different planes of motion, ranges of motion which you otherwise would not explore, and the fact that it's very active, right? So it's not like a yin yoga kind of stretch where you're just kind of relaxing into it, breathing into it, and then getting into stretches. But here you're constantly active, so your muscles are constantly working. You're building range of motion at the same time building strength in that kind of extreme range of motion. So that's very beneficial, especially as you get older as well. And I would say just the fact that your spine is kind of in a lot of positions is horizontal to the floor, or rather parallel to the floor, and it's horizontal. Kind of the way that your core and your stabilizers need to engage is very different as opposed to when you're upright, right? So we are bipedal animals. We walk on 2 feet. But just the fact that you get down on all fours and the way that your body has to then kind of, adjust to that surrounding kind of puts you in a lot of positions where your core is challenged, your joints are challenged, your awareness, your body awareness to how you're kind of breathing, your mind muscle connection, all of these things kind of, shoot up.
Very interesting. So for somebody that's maybe interested in exploring it, are there any prerequisites, any injury risks, maybe seniors that have a yoga practice that want to explore animal flow? How do you recommend somebody would get involved with animal flow?
So I would say let's kind of differentiate animal flow with animal-based workouts, right? So a lot of people do animal-based workouts. So when I say animal-based workouts, it could just be kind of mimicking animal movement patterns and just kind of getting down on the floor. And a lot of people do that, and nothing wrong with that. With animal flow, it's very, very specific. And the way that it's designed is that you learn certain moves which are level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. So I would say the first thing, if you want to explore animal flow and if you want to reap the benefits out of that, I would definitely say get in touch with a certified instructor, because there are a lot of intricate details and it's not just about, monkeying around on the floor. But every particular position that we get into, it's very scientific in the sense that we tell you exactly what's happening with respect to the body, the muscles, the joints, etc. So I would say definitely sign up with at least a level 1 certified instructors to make sure that, they're taking you through the process in the right way. And Animal Flow is brilliantly designed in such a way that it can be scaled to any kind of intensity. So it can be super basic, where even somebody who's 90 years old will see benefits from certain kind of positions. And it can be super advanced to somebody who's an advanced, maybe martial artist or movement practitioner, where you can really explore some kind of movements which will take a lot of practice. It's like a skill, right? So you have to, the more time you put into it, the better you get. So I would say, yeah, it's scalable. It's definitely open to anybody, but definitely work, at least in the beginning of your journey, work with a certified instructor.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I wanted to switch gears a little here and talk about nutrition for a few minutes. It's obviously something that you've been in the fitness industry for many, many years, and nutrition is a big part of that. You probably interacted with clients of all varying levels of health and fitness. Wanted to get your thoughts on nutritional literacy in India as in general, right? Where do you think we are at today, and where do you think some of the gaps might be?
Yeah, I think it's a huge gap, especially in India. Firstly, because again, we don't have a proper kind of organization which is regulating the food industry, even the fitness industry, right? So you can walk into any gym and then you'll have like maybe 10 trainers out there, and then maybe not even one of them is certified. So the same thing happens, I feel, with the nutrition industry as well. Anybody can make really tall claims about having this much protein in their product and this much of BCAAs, etc. But we are not talking about, is that really true? And also, what about the rest of the stuff that goes into your labeling, etc. So I definitely feel there's a big gap there. And especially now with social media and the internet and everybody getting on it, it's very easy for people to sell things and not be accountable. So I think for sure there's definitely a need for people to kind of educate in the right way. But then again, I would still say it's a challenge because there are so many experts in the industry and everybody has an opinion. So yeah, for sure. I think, that's actually, one of the things that was talking to you when we had a conversation a couple of days ago is that way, what you guys are doing with respect to Unbox is something that we really need in the country and in the industry, where you can have, legitimate tests. And then, you have these products which are tested, they are unbiased, which is the most important. And the fact that, somebody's not paying you to do this and you're just putting out some information out there and people can make informed choices saying, okay, this is what has been kind of graded. This is the product that I can use. This is the product that I don't want to use because this is definitely going to maybe make it worse for me because of the conditions that I have. So each person's different, right? So maybe one product works for somebody, but might not work for somebody else. So you can't really say that this is the best product out there for weight loss or anything. So I would say definitely we need some, people like you and organizations like you, which would kind of put the message out there saying we're doing some unbiased research. Here's the information. You make your choices. We are not going to tell you which is good for you or bad for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great point. Just to double click on that, right? There's so much conversation these days online about supplement consumption, and there's this whole community of quote unquote biohackers that are out there. Wanted
Yeah,
to get your take on supplement consumption, right? Is that something you feel is necessary? Is that something you suggest to your clients? What is
yeah.
your framework for thinking about supplements?
Sure. Again, it's not a, cookie cutter solution. It really depends on each person. So if somebody tells me that they're getting all their macros in place, they're getting your micros in place through regular food, then amazing, right? Absolutely no need for supplements. But unfortunately, most of us are not, right? Even experts in the field or people who've been working out forever or like taking care of their nutrition, it's really difficult right now to make sure that you get everything that you need in your natural kind of diet because of multiple reasons, right? So the way that food is grown now, the way that hormones are injected into all of your animals, and there's a bunch of reasons. The pollution, the fact that you live in cities now, not so much in rural areas where food was a lot more nutritious back in the day. So I would say I would first kind of ask my client to do some simple tests, even something as simple as just doing like a deficiency test to see what they're lacking before we can actually suggest some things. But I wouldn't say yes, it's absolutely necessary, but really on a case to case basis, I would definitely suggest some supplements. Yes.
Makes sense. What about you on a personal level? What supplements do you consume on a regular basis, and how do you decide which brands to even pick, right?
So I was eating meat for about 30 years of my life. So it's been about, I think, 5 odd years since I've quit meat. Um, so since then, I've definitely seen that I need to supplement. I need to be at least more conscious of what I kind of put into my system. It's a lot harder, as you probably know, especially when you're vegetarian. It's not that it's impossible. It's just that you have to be so much more mindful and you have to get like a wide variety of protein sources in your diet. It's not as simple and straightforward as it is if you're eating meat. So for me, I definitely supplement with protein. Sometimes kind of switch between whey and plant-based. So I'm okay with both of these. I don't have any, allergies as such. So now, like I was saying, because I'm training so many hours of the day, sometimes I feel the need that I to need to supplement more than just protein. So sometimes it could just be getting my electrolytes in place because I'm sweating so much. I'm also living in Oroville, and it's very hot there throughout the day, so you're sweating profusely. I sometimes also take magnesium, some zinc supplementation. So it really depends, I would say. So I don't really go on long phases of taking supplements. So I find like I do it for some time, see how my body reacts, and then I maybe lay off some of it and see how my body feels then. So it really depends, and I would like phase it out. But yeah, usually for me, it would be mainly protein. That would be something that I have to, and my electrolytes. These are my two main go-tos. The rest of them I kind of play around with. I'm just now experimenting a little with mushroom extracts like cordyceps, etc. So yeah, it really depends. I would say, I like to play around with it and see, and only if it's like a brand that I really trust. Yeah.
Right. That's a good segue. How do you define, or what does trust mean in this world, and when it comes to packaged foods and health supplements? And how do you personally decide a good brand from a bad brand?
So I would say, I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm in the industry, right? So it's easier for me in a lot of ways. So I even when I endorse brands on my social media, it's usually only after I've had a personal chat, and most of the time I've kind of had a conversation with the founder of the company. So somebody who's really in the know, knows what's going into the product, and I kind of like to have a conversation with them and really find out what the history behind the organization is, etc. So that way, I'm making informed choices, because at the end of the day, it's not just me who's consuming the product, it's my clients as well. So anything that I suggest, anything that Sweaty Ninjas, my online training, suggests, anything that my gym, Academy of Strength suggests, so we make sure that it's only when I'm really know about these brands and I really trust these brands. So like, because like how we were talking earlier, you can make really tall claims and then the product might really not live up to that. So my go-to right now for my personal and for my personal clients is that need to kind of have at least a personal relationship with the brand, and I know exactly what's going into it. And some of these guys are doing a good job in terms of putting very transparent kind of information out there, saying these are the tests that they've gone through, and this is what the tests are saying, and it's clean, and maybe fertilizer free, maybe non-GMO. All of these things make a big difference.
Absolutely. Wanted to switch gears a little and uh, ask you a few questions that might have some very actionable insights for somebody that's listening. Um,
Okay.
this is also selfishly a very personal question that I've always struggled with, right? Uh, for me, it's really easy to get out of bed, go work out, play a sport. But I always struggle to dedicate those 10 or 15 minutes to mobility on a regular basis.
Right.
It's been sort of an ongoing challenge for me as well. I'm curious to hear for somebody that has, let's say, can only dedicate 10 minutes per day to mobility work, right? What are some drills or routines that they could incorporate into their daily lives?
Okay. Really good question, because yes, often overlooked. But I would say as you get older, once you're, let's say, past 30s, it's probably what really needs a lot of attention. And when I say a lot of attention, it does not have to be a full power 1 hour session every day. Like you said, if you have 10 minutes and if you're dedicating that to some solid mobility work, I think you'll be in a very good place, because, you can really grow your muscles. You can do all the strength training that you do. You can also do flexibility based drills, which is kind of lengthening the muscle. But if you really don't take care of your joints and all of these other tendons and ligaments, then it could lead to, because they'll become your weak links in your body, right? So, and especially when you're doing, if you suddenly go out there and play a sport which you haven't done for a while, or even if you've been playing regularly, these are kind of you're putting your body into positions where suddenly you're going to have to maybe stretch or reach, or like turn or spin or jump, and all of these kind of explosive moves. And if your body is not really prepared for it, it at some point you're going to get injured, right? So I would say, I mean, it's very hard to kind of give a general answer, but if you ask me, I would say if you take care of your hip, shoulder mobility, because these are the usual areas where people tend to be tight, that kind of already ties down to your spine as well. So if you have limited amount of time, I would say just go on YouTube, find hip and shoulder mobility drills, and you have a lot of follow along routines, and there's so much information out there. And really, you can't really hurt yourself here because you're not really lifting any extreme amount of weight. So you can start slow. And trust me, like if you follow this properly, like within like 2 weeks, you'll see big differences. And of course, it's not like weight training where you're seeing physical changes, right? So with mobility training, you might not see physical changes, but just the way that your body feels, you'll know if you're putting in the work. Just like how your range of motion increasing, to aches and pains going down, to maybe your performance in whatever you're doing, whether it's something as simple as going to a gym and like you may be able to lift a little heavier, maybe go deeper into your squat. That could be something that you're seeing in terms of a good change. And like you said, if you're playing some sport and if you're able to kind of go through that entire 1 hour without any injuries or any pulls or tears, and you're able to perform better, that would be a sign as well. So I think mobility is something that you should definitely incorporate. You can put it as, the way that I kind of tell people is, don't treat it as a separate workout. do it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes before you start your actual workout. So it kind of becomes like your warm up, but at the same time, you're also training mobility.
Right. That's a great point. I think you briefly touched on it also, but I just wanted to double click on um, for so many people, it's so hard to measure mobility or at least
Yeah.
progress in mobility. When it comes to strength training, there's very clear feedback loops or instant gratification. If you're lifting heavier in a sport, you can if you're getting better. Yeah, if you're looking at cardiovascular health, you can track things like VO2 max or just how much time you take to complete a run. What are some ways that somebody could um, actively measure their progress when it comes to mobility?
So if you really want to get like super in, like, geeky and like get into it, then yes, of course, there are ways that you can check, you can take videos of yourself and see how much range of motion you have in a squat, how much ankle dorsiflexion you have, how much knee flexion you have, those kind of things you can definitely measure them. But I would say 99% of the population doesn't really need to go that deep into, how much of range you've increased. This would be more relevant for maybe trainers or sportsmen. But for most people, I would just say pay attention to how your body is feeling, right? Like I was saying, if your aches and pains have gone down, if you're able to go through your day without, your back hurting, your knee hurting, your shoulder hurting, if you're able to play sports, if you're able to kind of carry your kid without too much of an effort, all of these things basically are telling you that your joints are in a good place. And at no point should you, because there's this constant, a lot of people think that if they're not feeling sore and if their body is not hurting the next day, then that means they've not got a good workout, right? A good workout does not necessarily have to kill you. The whole point of being active and working out is so that you feel great. Like, you should be able to go through your life with less aches and pains, especially as you get older, right? I'm always constantly talking to my clients about longevity. It's not about killing yourself for 6 months and then getting ripped, but then at the cost of that is that everything from your knee to your shoulder to your ankle, everything's hurting. And then sometimes you're doing, damage that can't be repaired. So I would say, just giving that 10, 15 minutes a day, if not every day, at least alternate day of mobility work. And if you're pain free, then that would be a good marker for you to understand that you're doing your mobility right.
That's excellent advice. Wanted to, I think you briefly touched on flexibility, and a lot of people often use flexibility and mobility interchangeably. Could
Yeah.
you briefly explain how these two terms are different and how people should
Sure.
think about them differently?
Yeah, the easiest way to understand this is if I'm somebody who's super flexible, for example, right? So flexibility sometimes is very natural for a lot of people. You could be hypermobile or hyperflexible, where you've never really done any kind of flexibility work, but you're generally more flexible. And we already know that women are generally a lot more flexible than men. Same way, it's much easier for men to build strength as compared to women. Yeah, it's just how our bodies are designed, how our hormones come into the picture. Uh, so for example, somebody, let's take the example of a lady who's super flexible but also practices yoga, is able to get into these kind of extreme positions. So let's say, for example, a front split, right? So if she's able to exhibit that flexibility, it probably means that the length of our muscles is relatively longer as compared to somebody who's maybe much tighter, maybe who's done a lot of strength work, has not focused on flexibility. Let's take the example of a guy who's into bodybuilding, has a relatively shorter length of muscle because of the constant contraction that he's going through, but has not maybe spent enough time lengthening the muscle, right? So that would be main difference between somebody who's flexible and somebody who's not. So when it comes to mobility, so for example, now if I'm asking somebody to get into this kind of a front split, or like a position where is the length of the muscle is increased, but at that same position, if I'm going to ask him or her to exhibit some amount of strength there, that would be mobility, right? So for example, am I able to kind of get into that position, like a side split, for example, and get my knee off the floor? Right, so my butt is now not touching the floor. I'm able to just get my both my feet on the floor and then maybe lift my hips off and stay in that position. That requires me to not only have that length but also have the strength to stay there. So essentially what you're saying is I need to get left. Let's take the example of, let's say, getting your arm overhead, right? So for some people, even getting the bicep next to the ear is going to be a challenge. Maybe they'll be somewhere here. For somebody else, they can go all the way back here, but that does not mean that they have strength here, right? So if I put like a kettlebell here for them, that might be too much for them to take. So being able to kind of get that range of motion, but also have the strength or being able to exhibit strength in that particular range is what you could call mobility, right? So you could, in a way, you could describe mobility as a combination of flexibility and strength. So that way you've worked on your range by working on your flexibility, but you've also worked on building strength in that range. So that's why mobility is so important. So you could look at strength and flexibility, and then if flexibility and strength had a baby, that would be mobility.
That's a really nice framework. Moving on, wanted to ask you some very rapid fire question. What are three things about fitness that you wish you understood earlier in your life?
Something that I understood earlier. One is definitely the earlier you start, the better. So if you haven't started yet, the time is now, right? So with anything, right? So just give you an example. Now that I'm doing, Kalari Paita, the martial art that I was talking about, if I had started this probably 5 years, 10 years, 20 years back, I know I would have been in such a better position right now. Right. That goes with anything. I practice handstands a lot. And the reason why it was relatively easier for me as compared to maybe some of my peers is because I constantly practiced that back in the day, even though it was not with the right technique or anything. But just the fact that I was, as a kid, always trying to go upside down, that kind of muscle memory is always there. So I would say with fitness, with anything in health, start now. It's not too late, but the earlier you start, the better it is. It's something that I've definitely realized. What else? Another thing is, of course, nutrition, right? So and understanding that eating and nutrition is, if not equally, it's a lot more important, I would say, in a lot of ways as compared to your training. So you could be training like crazy, but if your food and your nutrition is not in place, then you're really not going anywhere, especially as you get older, right? When your metabolism kind of slows down, it's something that you have to really take care of. What else? uh yeah, and one more thing is maybe that the fact that the fitness journey is a lifelong journey. It's not something that you just do and then forget about it. Obviously, you could have small milestones. Maybe you have a wedding coming up, your birthday's coming up, and if you want to train hard for 3 months, that's fine. But always think about what are you going to do after, because most people tend to go crazy for those 3 months, and then after that they drop everything, and then they go back or get worse than where they started. So always look at fitness as a long journey, which is basically, you have to live with this body for the rest of your life.
Right.
So how are you going to justify training for 3 months and then forgetting about it? So looking at it more from a longevity perspective is something that I've learned over the years.
Yeah, those are all great insights. What is one nutrition myth that's out there today that you'd love to debunk?
Um, about all of these maybe fitness articles that come up with, this is the best food you can eat to lose weight. So there's always this kind of gimmicky headline which says eat this if you want to lose weight. So obviously, we all know that there's really no one food out there, one group of foods that you can eat which will help you lose weight. The end of the day, it's always calorie in, calorie out, right? But it's also not as simple as calorie in, calorie out as well. I mean, I'd like to say that because, again, now calorie in, calorie out has become so famous that everyone's only talking about that and not really talking about you also have to get more nutrient dense food as compared to just getting zero calorie or that kind of food. So I would say yes. So there's no one thing out there which will help you lose weight or gain weight. It's what you do consistently over the entire day, and then of course your entire phase of your journey.
Absolutely. A lot of people watching this probably consume a lot of their health information online, right? Through platforms like Instagram or other social media platforms. What are three health related accounts on the internet that you think every Indian would benefit from following?
Sure, yeah.
Aside from yours.
I say that again.
Aside from yours.
Okay. Well, I follow quite a few people actually. So one, I think now I mean, he's pretty famous now. I mean, you will definitely know him. Is Andrew Huberman, right? So yeah, he has a lot of good information out there. There's another person called, she calls herself Glucose Goddess. She talks a lot about, how insulin affects your body and your weight loss journey, etc. So I think that's another interesting one, which people can definitely check out. I really like the podcast that Rich Roll does. He brings on really interesting guests, and he's been doing this for a while. So yeah, so I would say these three people are pretty interesting for me, and I kind of follow their work.
Nice. Those are all great recommendations. Um, cool. We're coming to the end of this conversation, Devrath. Just wanted to the last thing we usually like to do is uh, play this rapid fire game called Overrated or Underrated, where I will name a health concept or a common intervention that's trending or being talked about. And
Okay.
you have to say if you think it's underrated or overrated, and you can use a few words to explain why you think so. Um,
Awesome. I'm glad that I can say a few words because I'm usually the kind of guy who's in the gray area. Like I don't have extreme views, but
sure.
yes, let's do this. Let's do this.
Uh, CrossFit style of training, underrated or overrated?
Gray. I would say gray. So, um, I would say it's a great form of training because it teaches you a lot of different skills. It kind of challenges you in different things, everything from your muscular endurance to cardiorespiratory endurance to strength to absolute strength to agility, power, all of those things. If I can just take out one aspect of it, I think it would be amazing, which is the competitive atmosphere. If I can learn all of those skills and get people to work out that way without really trying to outdo the person next to me, then I think that's a great recipe. Because otherwise, if you're going to be doing that, which is that highly competitive, where you're trying to lift maximal, submaximal lifts and then trying to do maximum number of reps, that's definitely asking for injuries. So, yeah.
Got it. Caffeine as a pre-workout supplement, overrated or underrated?
I think in a way underrated because a lot of people still kind of look for pre-workout supplements. You don't really need to. I mean, unless you really need it for your sport or for something that you're doing very aggressively. I think coffee can do enough and more for you to be able to kind of get if you are looking for that kind of wake me up kind of a situation. Yes, I think coffee is great as a pre-workout.
Daily foam rolling, overrated, underrated?
I would say underrated. But again, it needs to be understood in the right way. People think that just doing foam rolling is going to make you super flexible. It doesn't work like that because foam rolling, basically what it does is it doesn't change you physiologically, right? It just basically kind of tells your nervous system, okay, give me that little extra range of motion because I've now kind of, done my foam rolling or my trigger point release. So I would say the best time to use it would be just before your workout. If you can just like foam roll for like 5 minutes just before you jump into your workout, it'll give you that extra range of motion, which you can make use as part of your training routine. Whereas don't be under the impression that because I'm doing foam rolling, why am I not becoming flexible? Why is my range not improving? That's not how it works.
Injury risk of performing deadlifts, overrated, underrated?
I don't think there's any movement out there which I would say is going to cause you injury. It's just that it really depends on whether you're ready for that particular movement or not. So a deadlift can be super beneficial for 80% of the population, but maybe for like 20% who have some kind of a lower back injury or any other kind of injury. And if it's contraindicated, then I wouldn't suggest it. So I wouldn't say there's one movement which is bad for you or good for you. It really depends on whether you're ready for it and depends on your pre-existing injuries. Yeah.
Makes sense. Mm. Morning sunlight exposure to start your day, overrated, underrated?
Great. I think it's amazing. I think everybody should get sunlight, not just start of the day, but just through the day as well. We as Indians, unfortunately, are very conscious about how light or dark we are. So I feel like most people, at least in the urban population, tend to you know, we treat the sun as like so bad. I can't be under I need to cover my face and all of that. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why we are so deficient as well in vitamin D. So as a population, I would say definitely get more sun.
And lastly, cold showers slash ice baths for recovery. Overrated or underrated?
Underrated. I think it's really good. Especially if you're doing things which are kind of leaving you a little inflamed, I think it's a great way to kind of get a little bit of a recovery going for you. Again, it's not something that is needed for everybody. If it's definitely helpful for people who are really pushing their body beyond a certain limit. Like, if you're playing any sport, if you are into a workout that is pretty intense, then I would definitely say yes, cold showers or ice baths will help you. But also, besides just the physical aspect of it, cold showers also have a lot of other benefits in terms of your mental alertness and maybe also burning fat, etc. But that's like a topic for another conversation.
Right. Great. I think that brings us to the end of this conversation, Devrath. I wanted to, yeah, it's very inspiring story. Great to see, I guess, all of these, this journey that you've been through, and now how you're blending your spiritual practice with your fitness interests and bringing it all together. I want to say thank you for sharing your insights. It's been great to have you in this conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a fun conversation. Thanks for having me. And like I was saying, we need more organizations that like Unbox, which will really kind of, make sure that the information is out there so people can make informed choices. Of course, we just got to know each other, so I would really, I would say, I would like to your company and what they do. So maybe I will watch out for more details on your website and your Instagram page.
Sounds great. Thank you, Devrath.
Awesome. Have a good
Bye.
day. Bye.
Bye.